Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Shabbat Revolution, a practical guide to weekly renewal. Let me tell you how this little series came about. This past summer, I was traveling across the United States from community to community, churches and synagogues, talking about Israel and the importance of the Jewish-Christian relationship. I met amazing people everywhere that I went. But I also learned something that truly astounded me. Everywhere I went, I met Christians who were fascinated by Shabbat. They were hungry, thirsty for Shabbat. Now, that was surprising to me. As a traditional Orthodox Jew, I grew up in Jewish communities. Shabbat was something that we did. It wasn't something that everybody else did. Right? We stopped, but really the world around us went on as it always did. And here I was meeting people, none of whom knew each other. I met people in Spokane, Washington, in Lubbock, Texas, in Chicago, Illinois, all across the country. People who did not know each other, all of them Christians who were yearning for Shabbat. And all they wanted to talk about was how they too could bring Shabbat into their lives. And so the result of that incredible trip and meeting all of these amazing people was a new book. Right? I sat after the summer and realized that I have to write a book about Shabbat, about how to bring Shabbat into our lives, even if we're not Jewish. Right? Jews, of course, we've kept Shabbat for thousands of years. And we're not trying to make anybody else Jewish. That's not our goal. We don't proselytize. We're not a missionizing religion. We are a people. But we do believe at the same time that the whole world needs Shabbat. And for the first time in my life, I met people, non-Jews, wonderful Christians all across the country who are ready to receive, who are yearning for Shabbat. They were asking me so many different questions, and I realized that I had to write this book, Shabbat Revolution, a practical guide to weekly renewal. So I'm excited to begin this journey together with you. What we're studying here in this series is based upon this new book. But what the book can't offer is doing it together in person. And so here we are. I'll be able to demonstrate so many of the things that we do over the course of Shabbat and explain them along the way. But first, I have to ask you a fundamental question. When was the last time you truly rested? Now, I don't mean collapsing from exhaustion, getting a good few hours of sleep at night. I'm talking about genuine renewal. When was the last time you really felt that you properly rested, that you came out of it on the other side, a different person, recharged, right, in a higher and greater spiritual place than you were before? When was the last time you experienced that? You see, we live in the most technologically advanced civilization in human history. We have machines that do a lot of our work. I mean, just think about the laundry machines, a washing machine, and a dryer. The amount of time and energy and effort that people used to spend on cleaning clothing, right, is something that we spend only a fraction of that time on now because of our technological advances.
Are you enjoying this Bible class? Take your study deeper with Bible Plus. Explore over 200 courses taught by expert Israeli educators, right from the land where it happened. Get a free month trial using the code BibleStudy at checkout. The link is in the description below. Now back to your class.
We have apps to manage our time, devices that connect us instantly with anyone, anywhere across the world. And yet we've never been more exhausted, more anxious, more burned out than we are today. So why is that? Why is that? So as I mentioned, I was traveling over the course of the summer, and at one of my talks, I found that a mother of teenagers wanted to talk to me after I finished speaking. I thought she wanted to talk about Israel. That's what I had come to speak about, but really it wasn't about Israel. Right? She wanted to talk about her kids. And she said to me that her kids never speak to her anymore. And the truth is, teenage boys in particular don't really have that much to say. From my own personal experience, they're not the most expressive people. But she said that it went way beyond that. She really didn't know what to do. They had no interest in going to church. They were constantly online, and she was afraid of losing them. She felt that they were slipping away from her. She asked me if I had any advice, and I immediately said one thing, just one word: Shabbat. Shabbat is the answer to your problems. Today, we're going to explore a divine gift, and it really, truly is a gift that has been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years. A gift that I believe is the answer to our modern crisis. Let me just give you a few statistics for a moment. The average office worker today faces an avalanche of minimum 100 emails a day, and some people have several hundreds of emails that they have to go through each and every day. Our phones, we all know that we're addicted to our phones, but I think currently the latest study that I found shows that we're checking them like every 3 minutes, which is insane. It's like it's something that we can't control even for a few minutes. We can't control it, right? Which is in a sense far more intense than alcohol abuse, right? Being addicted to alcohol. Even people who are alcoholics are not drinking every 3 minutes, every day, every waking moment of their life. When it comes to work, it says nearly half of Americans are regularly working on weekends through the weekends, and 2/3 are constantly checking their email even when they're supposed to be off. We are experiencing, despite our technological revolution, which should be giving us so much extra time, we are experiencing the opposite, a time famine, right? This perpetual feeling that we don't have enough time, despite all of our time-saving devices. Now, this isn't just about being busy. It's about losing our humanity, about who we are as people. If we never stop producing, acquiring, achieving, then we forget who we are beyond our particular roles and responsibilities. If our whole life is about what our job is, then who are we really? Especially when those jobs end. Right? When we reach retirement age, we leave that job, then we're lost. Who are we? What are we doing? We have a family story. This is already from many years ago about my great-grandfather, who I never had the chance to meet. But he was an immigrant who, like many Jewish immigrants to the United States in those days, he had very little education. His job opportunities were limited. And so he worked as a deli counterman in a kosher deli in New York City. There used to be thousands of these kind of Jewish kosher delis around New York City. Now there's only a handful. But he, all day long, that's all he had time for. By the time he got home after working the counter, he was so exhausted, he just passed out, got up the next morning and went back to work. And so I'm told that when he retired, right, he was lost. He didn't know what to do. He just sat in front of a TV and watched Perry Mason, which is an old TV show. Maybe some of you remember. But he would just watch Perry Mason every day. And then after 6 months, he died, right? He had no identity beyond his work. So I'm not judging my great-grandfather, right? He had no other option to put food on the table. He had to work day and night, it seemed, just to scratch out a living. But today, we live in a world that's much kinder, and for many of us, much softer. And yet we're still unable to discover our own identities, to connect to who we really are. We have the same problem, but without the same excuses. King Solomon, the wisest of all men, he said in Ecclesiastes at the very beginning, "What profit has man of all of his labor wherein he labors under the sun?" That's the question. We're working and working and working, but what are we working towards? What is the purpose? What's the goal of all of our work? And even though we're more connected in a sense than we've ever been connected before, we have social media, we have, WhatsApp, which is the big thing here in Israel. It's like international text messaging. I can talk to anyone around the world at any time. And yet we're lonelier than any previous generation. So we've conquered space in a sense through technology, but we've lost ourselves in the process. The answer to all of this, as I told that mother of teenagers, is Shabbat. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and for 6 days, he shaped existence through his speech. Right? And then on the seventh day, something shocking happened. Right? This is Genesis 2, verse 2. God completed his work which he had done, and he ceased on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because on it he ceased from all his work which God created to make. Now, God has taken a nap on Shabbat, on the seventh day? God's resting? What's that about? Does God get tired? Does he really need to take a rest? What's this about, right? Why did God rest? God, of course, never gets tired. God is all-powerful, almighty. So why did he rest? And the answer is that he was teaching humanity, all of us, something fundamental, something essential, right? That stopping is not a waste of time, but rather it's fulfillment. Right? Real creativity in all of our work requires not constant creativity and productivity, but it requires a pattern of work and rest, engagement, and then withdrawal. Right? Doing, but then being. That is what Shabbat is about. The Hebrew word for the number 7, for the seventh day, is Sheva, which shares the same root as a different Hebrew word called Saveya, which means satisfied or full. It teaches us that 7 represents a full and complete satisfied circle. Right? The number 7 is completion. Right? When God declares something complete, it means it contains everything that's necessary. Nothing is lacking. Right? 7 is a precise number. 6 days of work and the 7th day of rest. Now, there have been many, human civilizations that tried to change up this particular pattern of 6 plus 1, of 6 days of work and then the 7th day of rest. During the French Revolution, they tried to make a 10-day work week. They were uprooting everything and trying to start all of humanity from anew. But it didn't stick. It didn't work. In France, too, today, they follow a 7-day week. Right? These human systems invariably failed. Right? Only God's plan for humanity has worked. Right? So this rest that we have on the 7th day is not a concession to weakness, because people have to take a break. Right? Just like for God, it's not that God didn't rest on Shabbat because he was tired. We're not given Shabbat just because we're tired, but it's rather the mark of completion. Right? It's the pattern for a healthy and successful life on this earth. Now, what is the Hebrew word for rest? Right? The word that we find in Genesis is called menucha. Menucha. Right? And our sages teach that menucha, right, is not just this absence of work, this taking a nap, but rather it's a positive creation, just as real as the creation of the earth, as the creation of the light, as the creation of the animals, creation of humanity. There's creation of rest. It's not just an absence of something, but rather menucha, this rest that God created on the 7th day, is just as real as everything else that God created. At the end of the 6th day, the world was lacking menucha. When Shabbat came, menucha came, rest came. Right now, unlike the way we usually think about holiness in this world, we usually think about sacred places or spaces. So there's temples or shrines, right? A holy place. Shabbat is not a holy place. It's not a physical thing, but rather it's holy time. It's woven into time. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, in his book, The Sabbath, he called Shabbat a palace in time. It's a dimension of holiness that we can enter every week, no matter where we are in the world. Right? Imagine a traveler who's walking on a path, he's on a long journey and he's really beat up. And then it starts pouring rain and he's getting muddy, he's getting filthy, he's soaked through to the bone, he's shivering, his teeth are chattering. He's really in a rough place. But then all of a sudden he comes across a warm inn.
Are you enjoying this Bible class? Take your study deeper with Bible Plus. Explore over 200 courses taught by expert Israeli educators, right from the land where it happened. Get a free month trial using the code BibleStudy at checkout. The link is in the description below. Now back to your class.
With all the good things, he enters, it's not cold anymore, it's warm inside. He removes his wet clothes, he gets a room, he puts on dry clothing. He eats, he drinks, he rests, he warms up until he restores his soul and gathers strength to continue on his journey. Right? Shabbat is the inn, this menucha inn, right? This hotel of rest where all who are weary from can come and rest from the work and the exhaustion that tires out our body, but also our soul. Right? Shabbat is a positive creation. It's not just a lack, not just a refraining from action, but it's something very positive. The sages call Shabbat a taste of the world to come. In Hebrew, it's called Me'ein Olam Haba, a taste, a little bit of Olam Haba, the next world. Right? On Shabbat, we stop trying to be productive and change the world, and rather we appreciate it as it is. It's a taste of what we experience after we leave the world, right? This whole life here on this world is about action, about doing, about making a difference, about making an impact. But in the next world, after we die, hopefully after long and full lives, we go to the next world, and the next world is not a world of doing and changing. It's a world of appreciating, of existence itself, not just trying to create something, but rather living that something itself. Right? There's no more work to be done. It's just living it. And so that's what Shabbat is. One day out of 7 every week, we have a day where we are not trying to change and be productive and create. And obviously those are wonderful things. But one day a week, we pause, and it is existence itself. Right? You could say that for 6 days, we're trying to master creation. But on the 7th day, we acknowledge that we're not masters. Right? That is menucha. That is menucha. Now we read also in the beginning of Genesis, at the very beginning of the Bible in 2:18, it is not good for man to be alone. It's not, of course it happens, and there are many people who are searching for a soulmate, or they've been married and lost their loved one way or another, but there are many people who are alone, but that's not the ideal. Right? The ideal, says the Bible, is not to be alone. Adam needed human connection, right? And unlike some religious traditions out there that really idolize this idea of being alone, and they say that that's the loftiest way to live and to be holy, is to go live on a mountaintop by yourself in the middle of nowhere and to be close to God all day long. Who needs other people? That is not the biblical perspective. That's simply not what the Bible tells us to do. We don't find that the Bible celebrates people who go off and are living, somewhere on their own, like a monk in a monastery in the middle of a desert. That is not the goal of the Bible. Right? Adam, by nature, the way God created Adam, is that he needed another person. He needed someone else to complete him. And so family, friendship is always at the center of our existence, according to the Bible. Right? If we go back to Exodus, right? Exodus 20, verse 8 to 10. Remember Shabbat to keep it holy. You shall not do any work. You, your son or your daughter, your male or female servant, your livestock or the stranger who is within your gates. Think about this for a moment. When we're taught about Shabbat, we're not taught about Shabbat in a vacuum. God teaches us about Shabbat in the context of family and community. Shabbat really can't be lived fully to the greatest possible extent by ourselves. We have to do it together with other people. And though this seems to be very simple, very basic, it's actually quite revolutionary. If you think about when God gave us this commandment to begin with, back in biblical Israel, right? It was an agricultural society that didn't have that much money. Right? A famine could come, right? If there was a drought, there was no water, then people didn't eat. Right? It was very, very easy, to lose the very basics of human sustenance. People lived, in a very tenuous way, in a way that's hard for us, certainly in places like America or in Israel today, to relate to. I might not have food to eat tomorrow. Right? That's something that we have a hard time understanding, but that's what life was like back then for the majority of humanity. And yet God comes and tells these people, right, in a revolutionary way, where missing a single day of work could threaten your survival. God ordains that every member of the household, from the head of the family to his spouse, his children, to if there are servants in the house, right, even livestock, everybody has to stop working for one day a week, right? That's incredible. Now, today, our culture is one that scatters us, right? We scatter in different directions, even on family days, right? When we all are holding a phone can take us all to completely different places in the world, to games, to news, to stories. Even though we're all sitting in the same room, we're in different planets when we all have a phone, right? Our whole society today is scattering us, but Shabbat is meant to bring us together. Okay? To bring everyone under the same roof without distractions, focused on connecting with one another. I remember an amazing story that I heard about the chief rabbi of England, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. He was really one of the great rabbis of our time. He died a few years ago. So Rabbi Sacks in London one Friday morning was at a Jewish school. And it's very traditional at Jewish schools that on Fridays, especially with young children, I remember when my kids were 3, 4, 5 years old, they would do like a reenactment of Shabbat to prepare them to they all get to act like they're grown-ups and run the Shabbat table. So you'd have the Shabbat Abba, the Shabbat Daddy, the Shabbat Ima, the Shabbat Mommy, right? And these cute little kids would sit and go through the motions of what Shabbat is, getting ready and learning about what Shabbat is so that when they go home, they'll know what to do. Now, it happened to be on that particular Friday morning, a reporter came with Rabbi Sacks to do a human interest story on the Jewish community. And she spoke to the little children, and with Rabbi Sacks. And a 5-year-old boy told her, he said that, why do I love Shabbat? It's the only night of the week when Daddy doesn't have to rush off, when Daddy isn't doing something else. This woman, this reporter, was just amazed. And when she turned to Rabbi Sacks and she said, Rabbi, this Sabbath of yours is saving their parents' marriages. It's saving their families. And that's the truth. Shabbat, right, is what saves our families. Shabbat, a day where we don't have phones. We put the phones away. We don't touch them. We're all together in one place around the table together as a family, feeling God's presence in our lives, enjoying together, eating, laughing, telling stories. Shabbat is what has saved our people. And Shabbat, I believe, is the answer to all of the problems that humanity has today. The philosopher Martin Buber, about 100 plus years ago, he famously distinguished between two kinds of relationships, an I-it relationship and an I-thou relationship. Right? So what does that mean? In an I-it relationship, we interact with others based upon their function or their usefulness. Right? Think about how we operate at work. Right? I have people in the office that I work with, and they do things that I need them to do in order for me to do my job. That's an I-it relationship. It's functional. We're working together, and it can be wonderful. But nevertheless, we're operating on that plane of existence, of relationship. And it happens again at home as well, right? I'm dealing with my wife about how to get the kids to all their different activities and to school, and who's doing carpool, right? And who's going to be home to make sure that we don't have a little kid at home by themselves. And the other one could be out seeing a client, right? All these kinds of conversations, the majority of interactions that we have in this world kind of boil down to being I-it relationships, right? They're very functional, very practical. But then there's something called I-thou relationships, where we meet another person as a complete person, right? Just for the person themselves. There's no goal. There's no functional purpose here. I'm simply interacting with the person, connecting with that other person for the sake of connecting with them. Now, so during the week, most of our interactions are I-it interactions, right? But on Shabbat, right, we're not allowed to create. On Shabbat, we pause, right? Our phones are away. We're not working. And so by nature, we are drawn into a different kind of relationship with the people around us, an I-thou relationship. We sit together, we have cold drinks, right? We sit outside on the porch, we talk about family, we talk about God, we talk about real things, or we're just laughing together. But either way, it's all an I-thou relationship, right? Shabbat is what brings us together as human beings, with our family, with our friends. In the book of Zechariah, chapter 8, verse 23, Zechariah.
Are you enjoying this Bible class? Take your study deeper with Bible Plus. Explore over 200 courses taught by expert Israeli educators, right from the land where it happened. Get a free month trial using the code BibleStudy at checkout. The link is in the description below. Now back to your class.
In those days it shall come to pass that 10 men from the nations of every tongue shall take hold of the corner of the garment of a Jew, saying, "Let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you." For about 2,000 years, close to 2,000 years, the relationship between Christians and Jews could only be described as tragic. There were some positive interactions as individuals, but overall, the relationship between Jews and Christians has been filled with tension. But today we are witnessing the beginning of the fulfillment, just the beginning, but it's happening, of these words of Zechariah, right? What's happening now is that the Christians are turning to the Jewish people and saying, you have what to teach us. They're not asking us to make them into Jews, and that's not our goal, right? We respect Christianity and want you to be wonderful, great Christians, committed Christians, right? But our job, and we view it this way as well, is to share the bounty of the Bible, to share our lived experience as the one people on this earth that have attempted for the last several thousand years to actually live all the different commandments of God in the Bible, right? We believe that it is our mission to share that together with you. And first and foremost, among those commandments that must be shared is Shabbat. Meaning, in other words, right, when Christians turn to Jews and say, share with us, teach us about Shabbat because we want it too, it's a fulfillment of Zechariah's prophecy. In Isaiah 2:3, the prophet envisions a time when many people shall go and say, "Come, let us go up to the mount of God, to the house of the God of Jacob, that we may be instructed in God's ways, and that we may walk in God's paths." The sages explain that God's ways refers to the broad principles of faith, while God's paths refer to the detailed practices that flow from those principles of faith. This class is about those detailed ways, right? Those God's paths, those ways that you can bring the holiness of Shabbat into your life. Don't feel obligated to do everything that I'm saying. That's not what we're doing here. This is not a prescription for every Christian to do everything that I'm saying. I'm simply going to share with you what we as Jews do, the way that we do our very best to fulfill God's laws of Shabbat, his commandment to rest, to experience menucha in our lives. And we're laying it out here on the table, just as this table is set before you, for you to take what is good for you, right? And what will infuse your life with more holiness. There is a hunger, right? As the prophet Amos said, that behold, days are coming, declares the Lord God, when I will send a famine in the land, not a famine for bread or a thirst for water, but for hearing the words of the Lord. I believe that famine, that thirst, right, is becoming stronger and stronger all across the world. We are experiencing this deep spiritual hunger today. We have so much material abundance, but we are hungering for meaning, for connection, for rest, not to take a good nap, but for meaningful rest, for menucha, a positive rest, meaning the rest of God of the seventh day. The Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim, right? The exodus from Egypt, the exodus from Mitzrayim. Now, the word Mitzrayim shares its root with the word Meitzar, which means narrow or constricted. All of us today are seeking our own exodus from our own Egypt, which means our own constrictedness, right? We're addicted to technology. Our sight, our vision has become narrow. We want to burst forth, break free of these technological chains, right? And experience the presence of God. We want to be free, right? That is what Shabbat is all about. The same Shabbat that has preserved the people of Israel for 2,000 years of exile until, thank God, we have now returned to the land. But for those 2,000 years of exile, how did we survive? Right? We survived because of Shabbat. There's a famous saying from Achad Ha'am, who was an early Zionist 100 20 years ago or so, he said that more than the Jewish people have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jewish people. Shabbat is what saved us. Shabbat is what gave us the strength to survive during the darkest of times. If Shabbat could give the people of Israel the strength to survive even concentration camps during the Holocaust, then certainly Shabbat can give all of the people of this earth, right, the strength to break free from the modern chains that we have brought upon ourselves. So as we begin this journey through the Shabbat revolution, I want you all to consider, please humor me, right? What would one day of true rest do for your life? How might it transform your relationship with God, with your loved ones, and with yourself? The gift is there. Shabbat is waiting. It's just like a gift in the corner, waiting to be opened, waiting to be unwrapped and enjoyed. Right? Think about that as we go through Shabbat, what this can do for you in your life. So in the coming sessions, we'll talk all about how to prepare for Shabbat. We'll talk about how to experience the Friday night dinner, which for many is a true highlight of Shabbat. We'll talk about Shabbat day, about the holiness as we reach the end of Shabbat, or those final hours of Shabbat as the day is slipping away. And then, of course, we'll talk about the Havdalah ceremony, the beautiful way that we wish goodbye to the Shabbat Queen. Thank you, everyone, for joining me on this journey and looking forward to part 2.